Okay, so just for a moment, I want to pivot over to your case study that you shared with me. I don't know the details, so I'm just as excited as everyone else to hear this. But you told us about a podcast that had an average of, I think, 200 downloads that
Yeah.
successfully pulled off a $300,000 launch, which is incredible. So tell us about the behind the scenes. How did that work?
Yeah, so this is really interesting because it ties back exactly to what we've been talking about. And I've started to kind of formulate this in my mind as kind of what I'm calling inside out marketing. And so it's
Mm,
like focusing on the people who are already in your existing audience first and kind of letting them spread it out from there. And
mm,
I think this is, like I said before, a lot of times we're like trying to get more people as much exposure to as many people as possible who have very loose connections to us or maybe no connection, and we neglect all the people who are already right close to us. And of course, probably most business owners have heard that it's easier to get an existing customer to spend money with you again than to get a new customer. And I think
yeah.
that it's the same thing where it's easy to get somebody who's already a super fan, whether or not they've spent money with you, to spend money with you or to engage with you further in some other way. And so
Mhm.
I think that that's really at the core of this. And so basically this client, she has a very narrow niche. She is a life coach for a specific industry and specifically women in that industry. And it's like there's maybe one other person who's serving that specific niche, but it's also like really small, so it doesn't make sense that there would be a ton of people there. And so she, I think, had launched this program before as a beta, and it had done pretty well, but it was like to 5 or 10 people, something like that, and it was a 6 month coaching program with a high ticket price. So I think that that's the important thing to realize, is that with a small audience, if you are able to kind of nurture them to that level where they're willing to spend a lot of money with you, like, you can pull off large launches. You don't need 100,000 people on your email list in order to make a six-figure launch or anything like that. And so in her case, she'd done this beta before, and she was looking to do it for the first time publicly. And she was planning out this full launch. She was going to do a challenge leading into it with all these like live workouts and things like that, because fitness was a large part of the offer and what was people were going to get out of this. And she also had this existing membership community, and it was, I think, $50 a month at the time. So like not super high priced. Now it's up, I think, quite a bit. But a lot of people in there as well had been kind of grandfathered in, who at zero cost, just to get some of her favorite past clients and things like that in there to keep the vibe going while it was still small.
Yeah.
And so she had maybe 150 people in there getting 200 downloads a month on the podcast. I don't know what her email list was at. It was like probably less than 1,000. And so like just super small everything. And she was like ready to go much bigger this time around. She had the challenge, like I mentioned. She had a whole Facebook ad campaign set up that she was like ready to press play on. And before she did any of that, she just pitched it, kind of a soft pitch to her existing audience who are already in the membership community. So that's like, 150 people in there. And she had 50 spots available for her 6 month program. And almost immediately they got all snapped up. So
Wow.
that's like, if there's 150 people in her membership community, it's like a 30% conversion rate,
Version,
something like
yeah.
that, on a huge, how much would it have been? I think it would be like a $9,000 program or something like
Yeah.
that. And so I was just like, whoa. She emailed me the next day. She was like, yeah, so I canceled all the Facebook ads. The challenge is off. The whole launch, not using any of it. I sold it all. And it was all through like basically using the podcast to nurture her existing community. And she was like, yeah, I keep getting comments like from all the people in the community. They're like, the podcast is such a great complement and supplement to the paid membership community. Like, we get so much out of that show. And like, pretty much all of her podcast listeners would have been people already paying her money. And it wasn't like about getting new people in. It was about just giving more in a different way and sharing other people's wisdom, the guests she had on, but as well as her own. And she used the podcast to, answer a lot of questions that would come up in the group that she wasn't able to, type out the answers to. And by sharing it on the podcast, it's both public, so people can find their way in through that. But it's also, other people in the group have the same questions, and she's able to answer those. And so really, like, her focus has been so narrow on this like tiny number of people who are already in her kind of inner circle, and they were able to help her pull off this massive launch. And since then, she has now started, getting much more intentional about audience growth and things like that. But I think that it's so important, especially if you're looking to grow quickly, to have a really strong kind of center of gravity of people
Mm.
who, as there's new members coming in, especially if you have a community element, like they can kind of keep the culture going almost and curate what the vibe is going to be for everyone else who comes in. And when people have been really taken care of, if you have like 100 people who you've really taken great care of, they're going to be the ones who take care of everybody else who comes in the future and kind of make you look good in a way. And so I think like that is just something that you cannot neglect if you're looking to build community and audience of any kind.
That is such a great way to put it. I love that. I'm probably going to have Sabrina, if you're listening, that's my podcast manager. Let's pull that out as a quote. I love what you said about if you take care of those first 100 people really well, they're going to take care of everyone else. That's such a beautiful picture that you're painting there. And I love that the central theme of everything you've shared today is all about really honing in on your core small group of loyal listeners and how serving them really well makes far greater impacts than these wide reaching traffic strategies to just drive, almost like vanity downloads just for the
Yeah.
sake of a single download. But who cares if they never come back and listen to another episode again, right? So